We welcome you all to this Zoom event. Let me introduce myself to you as just the next few attendees are joining. My name is Gail Presby. I am the co-chair of Great Lakes Bioneers Detroit Conference, along with Dr. Dean Nicholas Schroeck, who hopefully you can also see on your screen. And Nick, why don't you say hello briefly so that we're sure everyone can see you?
Yes, well, good morning. Thank you all for being here, and you'll hear more from me in a few minutes, but I'm very excited to be here and to host this this meeting with the Great Lakes Bioneers, which is just a wonderful organization, and we're so happy to be working together with the Bioneers on putting together this conference and future conferences. So thank you, Gail, and I really look forward to speaking with you all in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Dean Schroeck. And we have our next panelists for this very first Zoom session are all here with us. We have Jason and Maecy Zarate. You are about to see their video. And we have Sister Gloria Rivera, IHM. She is the outgoing Great Lakes Bioneers coordinator. And we are so glad that she is helping us with this first Zoom event that we are ever holding. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her. And then she is going to welcome you all. And then we're just going to say a brief hi from Maecy and Jason, and then we are going to show you their video. After their video, you will be able to ask them questions. And I'll tell you more about how to do that after we watch the video. So Sister Gloria Rivera, she attended her first Bioneers conference in 1998, and she was so enthused by the message of Bioneers, which she is about to tell us about, that in 2005, she decided with Paula Cathcart, also as an IHM sister, the two of them decided, along with other people in the community, to start the Great Lakes Bioneers Detroit Conference. And the conference has been held every year since. For many years at Marygrove, but the last 2 years at University of Detroit Mercy. And so this year we would have held the conference, except that there is a great restriction on in-person events at our campus because of the coronavirus, and that's why we are resorting to this Zoom. But we are so glad you're able to meet us in your various places where you are safe from the coronavirus, but can still meet people on Zoom. So thank you all for joining us. And please, Sister Gloria, why don't you welcome folks, tell them a little about Bioneers, and introduce Jason and Maecy.
Thank you, Gail, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. I'm very glad to be with you. We are all working hard to make this possible, and we thank Gail for her efforts to get us together, because even though we're getting used to technology and we find it very helpful, it is not as easy as it may look, at least to me. But I just want to say a couple of things before we move with the program for this first hour. And it's about Bioneers. The word is spelled, because I know we have several students during this session. The word bio, B-I-O, and then near, N-E-E-R, and it's a combination of the words biological, which means life, the study of life, and pioneer, which is someone that kind of gets something started and moves forward. So when you say you're a Bioneer, you can say that you are a pioneer for life, that you are working on behalf of life, regardless of what you do. In this case, we're going to hear very soon about Jason and Maecy's work, their brother and sister. You can see them on the screen. And all I want to say is that we're pleased to be here. We're pleased to start with two very young Bioneers. Nevertheless, they're pretty mighty and they're pretty amazing. I met them, what is it, Jason? Three years ago or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Thank you, Jason. And Jason was much younger then, and Maecy was a little younger too. But anyway, you're going to see their project in a moment and their study of butterflies. And then afterwards, Jason may tell you a little bit about his current project. But Bioneers supports young people who are starting wherever they're starting, and we like them to find support in us. And so Jason got a grant, and he did a job and work with his sister. And so let them show their video and their story. We welcome you, Jason and Maecy, and I know that your mom is helping as well and supportive. So let's hear it for Jason and Maecy.
If you'd like to just say hi, you can, and then we'll show your video.
Hello.
Hi. I look forward to speaking with you.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much. Now I am going to show the video.
Jason, would you want to tell us about your school? And Maecy, turn on your mics and just tell us the name of your school and what grade you're in.
Hi, my name is Jason, and I go to Stockwell Preparatory Academy, and I'm in 8th grade.
All right, how about you, Maecy?
Hi, I'm Maecy. I go to Stockwell Preparatory Academy, and I'm in 6th grade.
All right, and both of you, what's your favorite subject in school? So leave your mics on.
Literature.
Literature and science.
When I'm older, I want to go to the University of Queensland.
And study what?
Conservation biology.
All right, so that's why when you see the video, you'll see why Jason is already way on his way to do that. And one of the things that we do at Bioneers for those young people, there we go. So we turn off our mics and we listen. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jason, and this is my sister Maecy. We are going to talk about our efforts to save the monarch butterfly. My family has been helping the monarchs for years. We live in a rural area and have taken measures to protect milkweed and native plants on our property. We let our grassy areas grow and never use insecticides. Our property is even designated as a monarch way station. The monarchs need our help as they are considered at risk for extinction. One of the main reasons for this is habitat loss. Loss of meadowland means less milkweed and less monarchs. The use of pesticides are also a problem. The agricultural use of pesticides is harming the monarchs and other pollinator species, but homeowners are not helping either. Many people still use chemical sprays to keep insects from eating their flowers and plants. Our family looks at their gardens differently. If insects are eating our plants and milkweed, that means we are helping these pollinators thrive. Diseases are also decimating the monarch population. The disease OE has been found throughout the U.S. monarch population and causes weakness, disfigurement, and death. In 2016, we noticed a number of our monarchs were sick and confirmed the presence of OE spurs. via microscopic examination. Unfortunately, none of these monarchs could be released. Natural predators of the monarch also lead to population decline. It is estimated only 1 to 2% of monarch eggs actually make it through the metamorphosis and reach life as a butterfly. This picture is from our garden where a spider trapped an adult monarch.
Hi, I'm Maecy, and I've always loved butterflies, especially the monarch. And as you've just heard from my brother, our family has been raising and releasing monarchs for years. My brother and I even won a conservation contest at the Adventure Park in West Bloomfield. My platform was saving the monarchs. As the princess of the forest, I held the first coronation of the monarch event at the Adventure Park. We released over 100 tagged butterflies and had a great turnout from the community. I love sharing my love of monarchs with others. One time, this older man who came to the event to release a monarch for his dead wife, who had just died. I get this as I released a monarch for my Papa Bob, who had also passed away. With the help of our friends, Emma and Anna Thielander, we even planted a butterfly garden at the Adventure Park. After a wonderful summer as Princess of the Forest, I was very upset when I saw the milkweed in the medians of F59 being mowed during the peak of the monarch metamorphosis, meaning that caterpillars eating on the milkweed were killed by mowing. If the mowing would have been postponed just a few weeks, the caterpillars would have emerged as butterflies and flown away, saving hundreds of them. I was in tears and asked my mom to stop the car so I could tell the man on the lawnmower he was killing monarchs. My mom said we couldn't stop the man on the mower, but we could write a letter to the township, and we did. While waiting for the response about our letter, my mom, Miss Thielander, and people from the community went out into the medians to collect caterpillars from milkweed that was next to be mowed down. This was obviously not a long-term solution, but we did save lots of caterpillars. Here are some pics of the caterpillars we collected. They were brought back to our houses to continue metamorphosis. Our proposal to the township was to adopt more environmentally friendly mowing practices. This will allow milkweed and natural flowers to grow in the medians from June to October. We also suggested a sign to be placed in the medians so the community was aware of this no-mow zone. Our township supervisor, Mr. Rick Hamill, is amazing. He met with us and the Thielander family to discuss this plan, which we called the Milkweed Mile. For our proposal to be officially approved, we needed to present it to the Township Board of Trustees, and they all voted yes. They also agreed, to have Highland certified as a monarch community, the first one in Michigan, which would be celebrated yearly in a fall monarch festival. We designed a sign to mark the median, and a local businessman offered to pay for them. We originally asked for only a 1 mile section, but the township gave us almost 5. Highland is now the first monarch community in Michigan. Our first Monarch Festival was a great success and everyone had a great time. We have even continued to have Monarch releases at the Adventure Park.
As we already mentioned, the monarchs need our help. The monarch migration is considered an endangered natural phenomenon, and our eastern population has declined over 90% in the last 20 years. The decline is so concerning that the monarch is considered for listing as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act of 1973. This bar graph reflects the decline in the monarch population. In 2015, the monarchs had a great year, and we want these numbers to continue to rise. What you can do to help is planting native milkweed and nectar flowers. Make every day Earth Day. Start your own way station. Michigan has over 1,300 way stations. Let's add more. Join the Tag and Release program. Throughout Monarch Watch, we had one of the monarchs released from Highland recovered in the El Rosario Sanctuary in central Mexico. His name was Geronimo. Maybe your community would like to take the pledge to help monarchs and become a certified monarch community. What I'm doing is helping restore meadowlands in my community. Last year, my friends, family, and I cleared a field area at the Highland Township Library and planted over 26 species of native nectar plants and 5 species of milkweed. This project was made possible by a grant award did by the Great Lakes Bioneers in Detroit. Thank you. We appreciate your support. At last year's Monarch Butterfly Festival, I showcased this meadow area and talked with attendees about starting their own native pollinator gardens. My sister and I, along with our long-standing monarch-loving friends, the Thielanders, presented at the Michigan Wildflower Conference and were even interviewed on the Celebrate Michigan TV show.
Wasn't that a great video and a great introduction to this topic? Yes. Jason and Maecy, that was a great presentation. Now, pretty soon, in a few minutes, we're going to have a chance to hear from our audience. And I want to tell all the attendees that if you go down near the bottom of your screen and you see some controls, you'll see something called Q&A. If you click on this box saying Q&A, you can write a question to Maecy and Jason. So type out your question if you have one. And in the meantime, we want to get to know you a little better. And so we want to know who's out there and where you're from. So I am going to launch a poll just now. And you should see this poll on your screen. Tell us where you're from so that we can get an idea of who's here with us. Oh, you're doing great. I'm seeing lots of nice answers. I'll give you another 30 seconds to make sure. Oh, already 86% of you have voted. Ah, good. Okay, I'm going to show you the results. And we see right now our biggest audience is from Holy Redeemer. Welcome everyone from Holy Redeemer. We're so happy to see you. And we're very happy to have folks from University Prep, Math and Science, Voyager, a few students from University of Detroit Mercy. That's good. We may have more of them later in the day. And also our community members who are not students. We are very happy to see you all. Now, I have one more question. Oh, never mind. Actually, at this point, let me turn it over to Sister Gloria, who's going to invite, who's going to just say some interesting things, find out some interesting things about Jason and Maecy, and pretty soon we'll be answering your questions. So Gloria, take it away.
Thank you, Gail. And I think we already had a little bit of learning who Jason and Maecy are, but if you could tell us a little bit more, you're still working with the Butterfly Project. That's kind of a ongoing. But what's the next project you're working on? I think, Jason, you have a project you're working on. And also Maecy, let's start with Maecy. Maecy, you had your representative present about your project. Can you tell us about that? Ms. Haley Stevens, she did something. You remember? She's a representative in Michigan. Can you tell us about that?
We talked to Haley Stevens.
Talk a little louder, honey.
We talked to Haley Stevens. She actually came to one of our Monarch festivals, and she presented at the U.S. House of Representatives.
Yes, and why was that important?
She's letting people know about the monarchs.
Mm-hmm. And so we have the connection here. One of the things I see is you have the connection between the local, that is you and your family and your neighbors and your local government structure, your commissioners, but you also are now into the legislation, the awareness of the people that have been elected by us to work for us. So that was a great opportunity. And Jason, can you tell us what your next project is, briefly?
My current project is I got a grant from the Great Lakes Bioneers, and I'm building a chimney swift house at the Highland Township Library.
And what's the matter with the chimney swift?
The chimney swift is an endangered species, and they don't have many houses because people have chimney caps, and they only can live in certain houses.
Okay, so we might be hearing about that next year at the Bioneers conference, all your efforts. And Maecy, are you working with something else?
No, just the monarchs.
Well, that's plenty. That's plenty. I'm working with the monarchs too in my garden. I didn't have too many to visit, so I may have to come to you for some advice to help me get them here, even though I have pollinator flowers and all that. I'm not too sure what I'm not doing that they still don't like my house in Southwest Detroit. But I really, really appreciate both of you and all the work that you're doing. And we all on the panel and all listening to you, we want you to keep doing that, okay? And in any way we can support you, we're gonna support you, because when you get to the university, you're gonna continue to do great projects. And that's a great experience for all of us that are teachers on this panel and otherwise. All right, Gail.
Okay, thank you so much. And we actually have a little video clip of that talk of Haley Stevens about your project. But let's wait and see if we have time to show that video clip in this session. Because at this point, I want to turn to Dean Nicholas Schroeck, who's going to tell us a bit about the importance of environmental justice. So please, Dean Schroeck, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and so great to be with you. And both Jason and Maecy, I really appreciate the work that you've done. It's inspiring to me, and I love monarchs as well. My wife actually got into raising caterpillars into butterflies a few years ago, and so we have a couple of the little cages like we saw in your video, and we have in our yard we've planted different types of milkweeds. We have butterfly weed. We also have something called a swamp milkweed, which is a really cool, it's got a purple flower. I'm sure you know about that, Jason. But just different ways to try and provide the habitat for monarchs. And as both Jason and Maecy taught us in their video, habitat is so important for many different types of species. Things that we don't often think about, insects are so critical for us, for our health and for the food that we eat, and to make sure that we have a healthy planet, to be able to breathe clean air and to drink clean water. All of these systems work together, and we need to make sure that we're protecting things, even like butterflies and insects, that we don't always think about, but we really should, because even the smallest little creatures have a very important role to play in our broader ecosystem. And so I did want to just talk a little bit about how our laws, how environmental laws, and how things like the importance of our government. And I'm so happy to see that Jason and Maecy have reached out both to their local elected officials, so their township supervisor, people working at the local level, and then also at the national level. Because as we learned from their video, monarchs, they need habitat, they need places to live and to lay their eggs, and for the caterpillars to grow into butterflies. They need that habitat locally, but then we also need to protect them in a really big area, right? Like Jason had mentioned his one butterfly that made it all the way to Mexico, which is where they have their winter habitat. And so that means that we need to be thinking about habitat and areas for monarchs to stop and get a drink of nectar, all the way from up here in the northern part of North America, all the way down into Mexico, which is a really big challenge if you think about that. That's a lot of states, that's multiple countries involved, all the way from Canada all the way down to Mexico. So that means that we have to get our national government involved too. And so members of Congress knowing about this issue and working to try and pass laws that help protect species like monarchs is very, very important. And so I just wanted to mention a couple things. And again, this is coming right out of their video, but I wanted to explain how important these laws are. So the first issue is that they identified was the pesticides and herbicides that people often use either in their yards to try and get rid of what people think of as nuisance bugs. Maybe there's different types of aphids or other insects that might be bothering our gardens. But using chemicals can have really bad negative impacts on insects and butterflies and things that are very beneficial, like honeybees and other native bumblebees and sweat bees and these insects that are so important as part of our food supply as pollinators. And so we need to be really careful about limiting our use of pesticides and herbicides, because they can have pretty dramatic unintended consequences, meaning that they can be harmful in ways that they weren't intended when those products were released out into the stores for us to buy and to use in our homes. One example of that is that a lot of these chemicals end up in our water. They can get into rivers, lakes, and streams, and then ultimately in our drinking water. When we see testing for the water that we drink that comes out of our tap, some of that water may contain these chemical compounds that are in pesticides and herbicides. And over time, that can be harmful to us as humans. And so we need to be really careful about limiting the amount of these chemicals that we use out there in the environment. And so there are laws that deal with regulating these chemicals and that are meant to protect us as humans, but these laws aren't very good. They're not very strong, and the levels of protection and the type of review and analysis that's required before these products are released out into the market, it's not very detailed, and oftentimes we'll see chemicals be released that are available for us on store shelves, and then we find out years later that they're actually really harmful. You may have heard of something called Roundup, and I don't remember if Jason and Maecy, if you mentioned this in your video, but this is a very common herbicide that, you know, we can go and buy at the hardware store or at Meijer, you know, any of the stores that sell lawn and garden type of products. And that's designed to kill weeds, but it also can kill very beneficial plants like milkweeds and the nectar producing plants that butterflies and other insects need. So it's a really good idea to contact elected officials and let them know that you're concerned about these pesticides and these herbicides that are used so widely, even at our homes, and how those can be very harmful in many instances. And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention quickly was something that Jason talked about in the video, which is the idea that monarchs might become an endangered species. And an endangered species, that's a term that comes out of this law that, again, Jason mentioned, called the Endangered Species Act. And that law was passed, it's a national law, so it's applicable, or it covers all 50 states. And that law is designed to protect plants and animals, including insects, that are threatened with being completely extinct, meaning that there would be no more of these species left here in our country. And for some of these species, if we lose them here, they don't live anywhere else in the world. So they would be completely gone forever. And that can have really, really drastic consequences for our health as humans, but also for the overall ecosystem. And so this law was designed to make a list, and it's a really complicated process for how the government, and it's this federal agency called the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they maintain a list of threatened and endangered species, and they look at whether a particular species like a monarch butterfly is at risk of becoming extinct. And if they are put on this list, this endangered species list, there are all sorts of protections that are then available to these species, including the really important part of what we call habitat protection. And so, like the roadways that Jason and Maecy were talking about, where they were able to stop the mowing and to have more native plants put in along M59 there, that's really critical because we need habitat for these species to be able to live. And so the Endangered Species Act, if monarchs were listed, then we would have what's called critical habitat. We would have areas of property that would be set aside to make sure that these monarchs have a place to, again, lay their eggs and to have baby monarchs, and then also to have the nectar producing plants for them to be able to eat and get the nutrients that they need throughout their lives. But it's really a complicated process, this listing of threatened and endangered species. It also tends to get very political, and there are a lot of interests, people that have a lot of money that might not want to be told what to do with their property, or to be able to be told what to do with their business. And so it's really important that we contact, again, our elected officials, that we let them know that we care about endangered species. We don't want species to become endangered, right? Like, what we want to do is have things like the monarch way stations, to have habitat that we're setting aside in our neighborhoods and in our parks and libraries, which is a really, really great idea, to keep these species from becoming endangered in the first place. And so that's, I think, just a really, really good point that was made in the video, and it's something that I work with very closely with students that are in law school. So these are students that have been through college, undergraduate, and then they're off in professional school learning to be lawyers. This is a law that we study, and that we make sure that our government is effectively doing what they can to protect endangered species, with the ultimate goal of getting them off of that endangered list. We want them to be recovered to the point where they have a healthy population, where they're able to just do their thing, floating on the breeze, looking beautiful, and so that we can all enjoy them and the benefits that they provide to our overall ecosystem. And so then the final thing that I wanted to talk about was just this point that Gail mentioned about environmental justice. And so environmental justice is the idea that all of us, regardless of our race, regardless of our religion, regardless of our, if we have a lot of money or a little bit of money at home, we all deserve a say in the decision-making process for how we determine where we're going to locate polluting industries. So factories and plants and things like that, like actual industries that are heavily polluting, that we all have a say in where those facilities are located, and to make sure that they stay within the rules, that when they are emitting air pollution or water pollution, that they're following the rules and regulations that are in place, and that they're not emitting too much of that stuff that can be very harmful to our health and also to the environment. And there's been a history in the United States of locating these heavily polluting industries and facilities in neighborhoods that are predominantly people of color, and in neighborhoods where people don't necessarily have the money to be able to, hire attorneys, which are very expensive, to try and fight these facilities that have the resources to be able to influence members of Congress or to be able to influence local officials. And historically, it has been a very, very big challenge for us to make sure that we do have equality in deciding, where these heavily polluting facilities are located, and making sure that we seek justice for people that are impacted by that pollution. Meaning that if people get sick, or if their homes are damaged or their cars are damaged from this pollution, that they have the ability to go into court or to seek some compensation for that harm that's visited upon them and their families. And so it's related to this discussion about habitat and about the Endangered Species Act, because the way that we treat our environment, the way that we treat the smallest little creatures among us, oftentimes that's very similar to the way that we treat other people. And so if we think about endangered species the way, we should also be thinking about us as humans as endangered species. We should be thinking about how we can protect our habitat, because remember, we're all here part of this ecosystem as well. We have to think about, what does it mean for our health if our neighbors are suffering from horrible pollution and getting sick? Ultimately, that's going to impact all of us as humans. The same way that if we're limiting the ability of monarch butterflies to be able to live and thrive and do what they want to do naturally, that over time will impact us humans as well. So I think we need to think about not only protecting habitat for monarch butterflies and for all of our insects and animal friends out there in the world, but we also need to be considering ways that we can better protect the environment, to make sure that those of us that have the least amount of political power or financial resources, that we also have a seat at the table where decisions are made to make sure that we can be healthy, and that our kids can be healthy, and our grandchildren can be healthy, and that we can continue to live and thrive. So I want to say thank you very much to Jason and Maecy. You raised some really good points in your video, and I would just encourage the other students that are on the call to think about how you can, work in your home, in your neighborhood, to suggest that native plants be planted so that we can support our insects and wildlife in our communities, and to also talk again to, if you have an opportunity to write a letter or send an email to elected officials and say, I really care about the environment, I care about clean air, clean water, and I want you to do what you can to protect things like monarch butterflies that are so important to our health and to our environment. So thank you for listening to me, and Jason and Maecy, thank you so much. It's really inspirational to meet you and to see all the great work that you're doing.
And may I add just one quick thing? Thank you, Nick, but I'm aware that the two of the schools that are part of this webinar, Holy Redeemer Grade School and Voyager, are in the area of Southwest Detroit. And though I'm not sure all the students live in this area of Southwest Detroit, for those of you who do, and even those of you who don't live in this area, there is an area called 48217, the next zip code. And if you think of it as where the bridge, the 75 road goes going north or south. And when you get on that bridge, which is not very far from your school, either one of your schools, you see industry, you see Marathon, you see the salt mines, you see a steel plant, you see Ford, Rouge plant, etc. All of those industries are polluting the air very heavily. And many of the people who live in that area are victims and are experiencing environmental injustice because they cannot move. And there are many people who are very sick in that area, be it asthma, be it cancer and other illnesses. And it's directly connected to the overexposure to pollutants as well. So there are ways that you can work on that, and I'm sure your teachers can help you to understand that better and to begin to do something about it at that level. And I'm sure Professor Schroeck would be happy to help you through your teacher to guide you a little bit. So I just want to make that local connection.
That's a great point, Sister Gloria. And I should have mentioned that specifically, and thank you students that are joining the call today, that, you know, we all have a right to breathe clean air, and we all have a right to breathe clean water. And if our families, if we're not able to experience a healthy environment, we need to demand that. We need to demand that changes. And as Sister Gloria said, I mean, this is not a new problem. Many of these facilities have been located in Southwest Detroit for 50 or 60 years, maybe longer. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have to play by the rules. And also, over time, they should be cleaning up their activities. I mean, we have these laws, the Clean Air Act you may have heard about, or the Clean Water Act. These are federal laws. And often there's this attitude of, we have to just kind of keep things the same. You know, we need to, you know, ensure that we're keeping these factories operating for the jobs that they provide and the taxes that they pay, which is important. But over time, they should be getting cleaner. They should be installing new technology to clean up their pollution. And the only way they do that is that if we demand it, is if we, as the people, demand that our elected officials and our the Attorney General in the state of Michigan and the Attorney General in the United States, that they enforce our laws and that they hold polluters accountable. And that's very, very important. And so for those of us that live near these facilities, we can be the eyes and ears, and we can report if we see orange smoke coming out of a smokestack. I mean, that's something that we can report. We can pick up the phone and we can call, and we can call the police, we can call environmental regulators, and we can let them know that something bad's going on and it needs to be investigated. And then again, following up with elected officials to really keep the pressure on, because again, we all have the right to breathe clean air and drink clean water, and we need to make sure that we fight for that. And again, I'm happy to help, as Sister Gloria said, if you have any further questions about that. Thank you.
That's so great. And maybe Dean Schroeck, maybe in the chat, you can give us the phone number that people should call if they want to report anything like that.
I'll do that.
Okay. And in the meantime, I want to ask Maecy and Jason a question on behalf of one of our participants who posted a question to the board. And by the way, if any of the rest of you want to ask a question, by all means, this is your chance, because we're coming near the end of the session. But we have a question that says, of all the endangered species, what drove the two of you to help save specifically the monarchs? So that's a question. And another more general question wants to know if there's anything beyond your video that your research showed about the butterflies. But please tell us a little bit about why the monarchs, please.
The monarch is a key species for a lot of insects and other creatures. So that's why we chose it. And I really like the color of its wings. It's really cool.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about which other species are harmed by the loss of monarchs.
There are species that are harmed by the loss of milkweed, like the milkweed bug, which is another endangered insect that eats milkweed just like the monarchs.
And if I could add to that, Jason, remember, and we learned this from their video, that most monarch eggs, so the eggs that are laid by the butterflies, most of them do not make it to be caterpillars or to then become monarch butterflies after they've been in their chrysalis. So many of those eggs are actually eaten by other insects too. And that, you know, that might sound a little bit like, we don't want that to happen, but that's actually part of the natural system and the way these things are designed, that there are you know, certain insects are predators of other insects, and that's just the way that the ecosystem has evolved over time. And so if you lose something like monarchs, that means that there's less food for other types of insects that also provide benefits to our ecosystem. So as Jason said, I mean, the plants themselves, the milkweed plants are host plants for other types of insects. A lot of the other nectar plants, so the wildflowers and beautiful nectar-bearing flowers, those are very important for all sorts of other insects as well. So if we any one of these little pieces in this chain of our whole ecosystem, if we lose it, it can have really bad consequences.
Okay, thanks so much to all of you. I have another question to ask you. All three of our speakers here. How did each one of you benefit or change from investing your time and care for monarchs, nature, your community, and the earth?
I got a lot of community service hours, and I just like hanging out in the outdoors. And
I got to hang out with my friends, and we were able to plant a lot of milkweed and make all these gardens and stuff together. So
Yeah, and for me, very similar to Jason and Maecy, I love being outdoors when I can. It's something that I think of it as sort of charging my batteries, right? If I'm a human and if I had a battery, I would feel like I get charged up by being out in nature. I love listening to the sound of birds and insects just outside doing their thing. And so for me, it's a great way for just, and what I also think about is my own mental health, right? It helps me just kind of feel grounded and being a part of the earth and a part of this ecosystem, and trying to just kind of be in tune with that. And so that helps me in my own life. And then I also like to think about, perhaps leaving the planet, leaving the earth a little bit better than the way that I found it. That's something that I try and work towards. And so like Jason and Maecy with planting native plants, I love, I go around, I actually plant trees. That's one thing that I like to do from a charitable thing. I like to participate in tree plantings because I love the idea of a tree being around, 200 or 300 years from now, providing shade to people and providing, nuts or leaves for other insects long after I'm gone off the earth. And that makes me happy to think that that's something that we can do and participate in.
You might have been wondering who Dr. Victor Carmona is. He's been here on our Zoom. He's a panelist, and he is Associate Professor of Biology and Director of Sustainability at our university. He's going to be the main speaker at our next Zoom at 11, but right now he has a question for Jason and Maecy. So Dr. Carmona, please share your question.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your project. I really enjoyed both the video and your conversations with us. It's been fantastic to hear. I myself always wanted to go to Australia, and when I got to go, I went to Queensland because I studied tropical biology. And so I recommend, Jason, that before you go to the University of Queensland, you go check out Cook University in Cairns. It's fantastic. I can't stress it enough. My question for you guys is, did you guys notice the difference in the wing patterns between the boy and girl butterflies? And if so, did you guys try to see if there were more boys hatching or girls hatching depending on where you were growing these? Just curious.
yes, the boys have black dots and the girls don't. And I look at the list because when we're tagging them, we write down if they're male or female. And usually it's around the same.
Oh,
Sometimes when populations are stressed, and stress can be many things, for some folks it's not drinking coffee in the morning, but for insects it can be eating plants that perhaps aren't watered well or are experiencing drought or any number of conditions in their immediate environment. And so if you're eating that kind of food, you also get stressed. And sometimes you can notice changes in the proportion, right? The number of boys to girls in a population. And so it's a nice way to monitor sometimes changes that are happening in the local environment. So I'm glad you guys are taking data. That's exciting.
Okay, I want to thank all the participants of this session. We're on our last few minutes before our next session starts at 11, but actually these few minutes gives us just a break to watch that video from Representative Haley Stevens. So, but first, let's give a round of applause. Jason and Maecy, wonderful project. We love your project. And now, if I succeed, hopefully better than last time, I am going to show the video, and then we will start our news session at 11.
Efforts of the Thielander and Zarate families, who have spearheaded a conservation and awareness program for thousands of beautiful monarch butterflies that began their lives as caterpillars in Michigan's 11th district before attempting the 2,000-mile migration to central Mexico every year. A couple of years ago, Maecy Zarate, who was then just 8 years old, petitioned the Highland Township Board to establish the Milkweed Mile, a beautiful stretch of land along Highway M59 in Highland Township that provides a sanctuary for monarchs. Along this stretch of road, which is designated as a no-mow zone, milkweed is left to grow and thrive freely, creating an ideal environment for monarch caterpillars to complete their life cycle. Each summer, these conservation efforts culminate in the Highland Monarch Butterfly Festival, an annual celebration of these amazing butterflies and an effort to raise awareness of this species that has seen their global populations plummet in recent years. I was honored to visit the Monarch Festival in August of 2019, and it was so inspiring to meet young Michiganders passionate about conservation and biodiversity in our great state. This is also part of the work that we are doing on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee to protect and to promote biodiversity throughout the world. The Thielander family also tags and releases hundreds of monarchs every year. One butterfly named Geronimo was tracked all the way from Michigan's 11th district to central Mexico last year, beating the odds and completing a grueling 1,900-mile journey over 3 months. This is significant and symbolic. Symbolic because of the journey that we are on as a nation right now in somewhat uncertain and troubling times, but with an end goal to reach the other side. The Monarch Sanctuary along Milkweed Mile provides a special opportunity for young people to get involved in real conservation efforts right in their backyard. As Maecy says, if there is no milkweed, there are no monarchs. I look forward to working with monarch lovers all over Michigan to protect Milkweed Mile as a sanctuary for years to come. And so I ask this chamber to join me in recognizing the inspiring efforts of the next generation of conservationists who are making a difference in our community through their passion and dedication for these beautiful butterflies. I could not be more proud of their efforts, and I look forward to learning more about their progress in next year's Monarch Festival. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
All right, that's great. Whoa, darn it, sorry. What have I done?
You haven't done anything. In the meantime, I'd like to thank all the teachers and all the students that have participated, and hopefully some of them can continue with the next webinar, which will be quite interesting, and there's 2 more later on. So
Okay, so actually it's already 11 o'clock, so we're just going to go straight into our next event. And thank you, Jason and Maecy. You can now go and do the rest of your conservation events, but you are also welcome to stay if you would like to hear the rest of the presentations. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. And this, bye.
Bye.